With just under 2 weeks of being released, Wednesday has already garnered over 411 million hours of watch time worldwide, making it a new record for Netflix. Now, while nostalgia does play a major factor in the show's success, you can't deny that the show was simply done beautifully. Tim Burton and the entire cast put their heart and soul into it, and well, you can really see it. In this video, we're going to be taking you behind the scenes of Wednesday to show you just how much work it took to bring Tim's vision to life. This isn't CGI. Even though Thing was literally just a hand, he had a huge impact on the show. But did you know Thing wasn't actually CGI? It's real. Well, mostly real. Victor Dorobantu is the man who brought Thing to life and made it into a character rather than just a moving hand. All he needed was a little bit of guidance from Tim Burton and some editing to deliver possibly the best Thing ever. Instead of going the easy way out and having Thing be a totally CGI character, Wednesday went with a live actor to bring their performance to life. And that's where Dorobantu comes in. He shared some behind-the-scenes pics of how physical his performance was. He was dressed in an all-blue suit and was put into lots of uncomfortable positions around furniture. But this was all done to give Wednesday a more Frankenstein-type look. They used a lot of makeup to add stitches and other marks. The editors then used their magic to make sure Dorobantu's body was gone, and they even created a seamless skin to cover the top of his wrist. The rest was all Dorobantu and his ability to convey that much emotion through his hand. Jenna Ortega never blinked in the show. Wednesday is already a pretty creepy character, but what adds to her already creepiness is the fact that she's never blinked in the show. All right, well, maybe sometimes, but like very rarely. Tim Burton came up with the idea and Jenna Ortega committed to it. That's why when she did blink, it was always a super powerful moment. Jenna Ortega's lack of blinking on Wednesday wasn't intentional by the actress. It was actually a lucky accident. While filming, Jenna absent-mindedly forgot to blink her eyes, probably because she was too caught up in the act. And when Tim Burton saw the take, he knew he'd stumbled upon something special. A lack of blinking is actually something that appears in many of Tim Burton's movies, including Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and Dark Shadows. It just so happens that blinking is one thing Tim Burton finds particularly creepy. Yes, even uttering the word blinking makes him feel uneasy. He said, "I don't know why. Even when you're mentioning it now, it freaks me out." Who knew something so biologically normal and necessary could help to create Wednesday's eerie demeanor? It's even more unnerving when you consider her perpetual stare that never seems to end. A subtle detail that really adds to the unsettling character. Christina Ricci is the original Wednesday. Christina Ricci's character, Miss Thornhill, is one of the few characters that actually feel normal in the show, for the most part at least. And that's exactly why it was so shocking to hear that Ricci actually played Wednesday herself in the 1991 Addams Family when she was just 10 years old. Christina Ricci actually said she's pretty pumped about passing the torch of Wednesday Addams to her co-star and one of Gen Z's rising stars, Jenna Ortega. Even though Ricci is best known for playing the morbid and deadpan daughter of the Addams Family, it seemed like she couldn't have been happier to give up her old role, especially since the character has been adapted for a modern audience in the show. While paying homage to Christina Ricci's original portrayal of Wednesday from the early 90s movies, this new version of the character is a bit more complex and three-dimensional. She's taken out of the family ensemble and placed into the spotlight at Nevermore Academy, her own story branch. Her look has been modernized but still maintains that classic Wednesday feels. Straight bangs, pigtails, and a wardrobe that definitely doesn't scream happy-go-lucky. But beneath all of this is a character with a much more emotional core than what we've seen before. The creators of the show took a massive risk by making some major changes to Wednesday Addams from Ricci's version, and it paid off. After introducing us to a Wednesday that's more in touch with her emotions than ever before, the series has been met with an overwhelmingly positive response. In fact, it's already broken several records, taking the title of the most-watched show on Netflix during its first week, beating out even Stranger Things. Ortega never talked to Christina Ricci about playing Wednesday. Since Christina Ricci was the 90s Wednesday twice, you'd probably expect Ortega to ask her for some advice for the role, but she did the complete opposite and avoided the topic entirely. So why would she do that? Well, Ortega wanted to make this Wednesday her own. If she did end up asking Ricci for some advice, this Wednesday would have probably just been the same thing as all the other ones. So that was actually a pretty smart decision by her, since they both got to portray Wednesday in two completely different ways. Thing's language is completely made up. Obviously, being just a hand means Thing can't just talk to people. He needed a different way to communicate. So in the show, he basically just made up a language that everyone can interpret for some reason. At first, most people thought it was sign language, but Ortega revealed the whole process the creative team went through behind the scenes to create this language, and it's not what you'd expect. According to Ortega, every day he would just make random movements with his hands until they'd go like, that one looks right. Yep, it was as simple as that. Netflix wanted to cut Wednesday's darkest lines. Wednesday's dark lines are basically what makes her character, but did you know that Netflix actually wanted to get rid of them completely? Fortunately, though, the creators of the show were able to convince them to keep the lines. Creators Miles Miller and Alfred Gow were adamant about keeping Wednesday Addams' trademark dark humor intact when they were talking to Netflix. Apparently, some of the execs got a little uncomfortable when they heard lines like, "I do like stabbing. The social part, not so much." But the co-creators weren't going to budge on this one. They argued that Wednesday's macabre sense of humor is what makes her so iconic, and they eventually managed to convince the execs to keep the lines in the show. Wednesday Addams' dark humor is something we're all used to seeing in all of her versions. If she didn't have those sadistic tendencies and gothic style, she would basically be unrecognizable as Wednesday. And clearly it worked out because not only did the audience love Ortega's portrayal of Wednesday, but so did the critics, which isn't easy to do. Ortega choreographed the dance scene herself. The dance scene in Wednesday is probably the most iconic part of the show. Even if you haven't seen any of the episodes, chances are you've probably seen this scene just because of how viral it went on social media. What surprised people the most about the scene is the fact that the dance was choreographed by none other than Ortega herself. She even made sure it would be as authentic as possible by using inspirations from the 80s goth clubs and some of the previous Addams Family content. Ortega admitted that she actually felt really insecure when filming the dance scene for Wednesday, not only because she wasn't a dancer or a choreographer, but also because she had only gotten the Cramps song a week before filming. And if things couldn't get any worse for her, she was also unknowingly dealing with COVID. Talk about an intense situation. But despite all this, Ortega still managed to pull it through. Ortega learned the cello just for the role. You know you're committed to a character when you're willing to learn a whole instrument for just a couple of scenes. And that's exactly what Ortega did with the cello. On average, it should take your ears years to learn cello, but she did it in just a couple of months. Well, it wasn't perfect. It was just what she needed for the couple of scenes that involved the instrument. She actually shared a little sneak peek as to what her training was like on her Twitter account. You can really tell Ortega put her all into this character. Not only did she learn the cello for this, but she even choreographed a dance for it, learned a fence, practiced martial arts, archery, and even some German. And all of her hard work definitely paid off in the end. A magician's hand. With the way Durabantu was able to act with just his hand, you'd probably assume that he must have been some sort of hand actor all of his life. But that's far from the case. He's actually a magician. You know what's even crazier, though? The guy who played Thing in the 1990s Addams Family movies, Christopher Hart, he was also a magician. So, not only did the two of them get to play such a weird character, but they're both also magicians. Guess you'd probably need to be magical to make your hands move like that. The song and the dance sequence had more meaning than you'd think. Believe it or not, the song used in the iconic dance scene wasn't Bloody Mary by Lady Gaga. It was actually Goo Goo Muck. Even though Lady Gaga's song is the one going viral for Wednesday, it's just a Mandela effect that everyone's fallen for. More and more people are finally finding out that the Gaga song wasn't the one in the show, instead Goo Goo Muck. And a lot of people are actually upset that it wasn't Bloody Mary and wished they would even change it. But while people might think Lady Gaga's song fits Wednesday better, that actually, it isn't the case. The exact meaning of Goo Goo Muck is still up for debate, but it's clear the song is about dealing with teenage life as a monster. It talks about tigers, night headhunters, and beasts roaming through the night. Enough to indicate the narrator might be some kind of werewolf or creature in the dark. This makes perfect sense when you consider that Wednesday's Season 1 is about following the lives of those attending Nevermore Academy, a school for supernatural outcasts. These monsters are feared by so-called normies, and Tyler in particular makes on the mantle of a literal teenage monster who's terrorizing both normies and outcasts in Jericho at night. Ortega has actually written a book in real life, too. One of the few hobbies Wednesday has other than playing the cello is writing books and novels. In fact, she even writes down the entire first season as her book, but her passion for writing books extends beyond the show. Ortega herself has actually written a book, and that too when she was just 18 years old. It was back in 2020 when she released a book called It's All Love Reflections for Your Heart and Soul. It's about her life and all the struggles she went through growing up. The book is basically her private journal that she's released to the world. It's these moments when you can tell Jenny Ortega is not Wednesday because she would never let anyone read her journal. That is, even if she even risks owning one. And that's all for today's video. Did any of these behind-the-scenes moments shock you? Well, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time.